Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned, where we're going to be talking about the future. Yes, we'll be talking about the future today. The future, specifically next year. I like to plan ahead for my reading, and I have since I've gotten on BookTube. You know, there's just so much stuff I want to read, and usually I'm very unsuccessful at getting to all of it. So I always like to take stock of how the year's been going and try to make the next year more realistic as far as the amount of things I expect to actually get through. And it never works, ever. It never ever works. I always have unreasonable expectations. This year has been particularly bad though the past few months as far as reading events have been concerned. I mean, I've been really looking forward to like June on the Range, and Rocket Summer, and Garb August, all these great reading events. And, when the month hits, everything else hits the fan. I mean, this month has been the worst. This month has been frankly terrible, particularly the first couple weeks of this month. Just through everything. So I didn't have as much time to read, so I didn't read as much as I'd have liked. I had a ton of trash to read this month, Roger, for Garb August, and it didn't happen. So hopefully next year will be better. So I will be talking here about the reading events that I'll be doing next year. Some of the things I want to get to next year. Some of the reading events I won't be taking part in because I just don't have time. Actually, I'm going to be doing everything pretty much that I tried to do this year, but hopefully with more success. We'll see. We'll see. So let's talk about next year and what I've got on my plate. So, I wasn't going to forget that. I wasn't going to forget Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. So every month I read a book from Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, the cheapest book club around. Every book is available for free on Project Gutenberg. And even though most of the time it's only me and Roger reading these books, I'm going to keep up the book club. Other people sometimes join in, but I am going to be keeping up with Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, like this book's special preview for next year. It's highly likely this will be one of the books that we read for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club next year. The World Set Free by H.G. Wells. This is a paper copy, but you can get a digital copy for absolutely nothing. For nothing! You can get it for nothing, Roger. The World Set Free by H.G. Wells. Probably going to be on Roger's Cheap Old Book Club next year. Probably. We'll see. But what else do I have on my plate for next year, Roger? Well, I've had a couple ongoing projects. The Read Every Book By projects. Which this year, just because of everything else, I didn't make much progress in either one of these. And one, of course, is Stephen King. When I started my channel, I started the Read Every Book by Stephen King project, and I still have a long way to go. So Stephen King, reading every book by Stephen King, including this piece of crap here, The Tommyknockers. I did read this once before, and I remember it not being very good. I remember it not being great. But, when I get to it, I'm reading them in publication order. And the next book I have to read is the Bachman books, which I was hoping to get to during Garb August, but it didn't happen. But the Bachman books, that's the next book in publication order that I have to read, because I'm reading, the stuff that was published under Stephen King's name. And so, otherwise I would have read the Bachman books first, right? Because didn't they come out earlier? I don't know. I'm reading them all in the one omnibus volume as it appeared. So that's next. And then eventually I'm going to get to this stinky piece of crap, because I remember this not being very good. But maybe it's better than I remember. Maybe it's it's probably not. But yeah, I'm going to try to do a lot more as far as the Read Every Book by Stephen King project next year. We'll see how successful I am. I'm also reading every book written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is actually the next one I have to read. Tarzan the Untamed. And yeah, I definitely want to get to a lot more Edgar Rice Burroughs next year. I love this author, and this is I'm going to be reading every single book written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is probably the only time in my life where I will read every single book by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I did this I read most of his books when I was a teenager. And so I'm doing this all now. I probably will never do it again. I can't see myself when I'm 70 or 80 going, I'm going to read every book by Edgar Rice Burroughs again. Probably not. So I want to get back to this project. Tarzan the Untamed, that's the next one. And then there are, of course, the annual reading projects. So which annual reading projects will I be doing next year? Okay, these are the only ones I'm going to be doing, and it pretty much covers half the year. But I'm trying to do it this year. I'm going to be trying to do it a little bit differently. I'm not going to, sometimes when I do my reading projects, I just focus on, or my reading events, when I do the reading events, I only focus, or I focus 90% of what I read on books for that event. But I'm probably going to be stepping back from that and reading less for the reading events in some cases, and mixing in some other stuff. But it depends. We'll see how it goes. And the first reading event next year is going to be in May. That's the first event I'm going to be doing, is in May. So I'll have the first few months of the year free to read other things. But the first one is going to be Horror Mayhem. And this book, More Macabre, I read the Macabre Reader for Horror Mayhem this year. But next year, I will probably, most likely, read this book as well as some other things. Horror Mayhem, fantastic reading event created by the Bookish Bryants. Wonderful, wonderful people, the Bookish Bryants. Unfortunately, we lost Scott Bryant this year, which was really a tragic and awful thing. But Horror Mayhem will continue. It has a life of its own, Horror Mayhem, and I will definitely be taking part in Horror Mayhem. It's just a wonderful event, all about reading shorter horror fiction. And this is a book of short horror fiction. So yeah, definitely Horror Mayhem. I had a great time with Horror Mayhem this year, and it was pretty successful. I actually read quite a bit for Horror Mayhem. That was awesome. So it's always a great reading event. So definitely going to be doing that again. And of course, June on the Range, the reading event dedicated to reading Westerns. I never read as many Westerns during June on the Range as I want to. So this might be an event where I just go all in and just totally focus on Westerns and only Westerns all month. We'll see. This year, I just didn't have the time because of other things that popped up. But June on the Range, always so much fun. And next year, it's going to be even more fun. It's going to be even more fun next year than it was this year. So yeah, definitely going to be doing June on the Range. Then yes, Rocket Summer will continue. Rocket Summer returns next year. Rocket Summer, the reading event, all about classic science fiction. Classic science fiction beginning whenever you think science fiction began and ending in the 1960s. So the cutoff point is 1969. And it'll be the same format next year as it was this year, where, we have different decades for different weeks. It'll be awesome. This is The Puppet Masters by Robert A. Heinlein. So I'll probably read this so I could be Heinz-splained some more by Heinlein. Heinz-splained to by Heinlein. The Puppet Masters. I heard a lot about this book this year because I read Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And a lot of people mentioned The Puppet Masters. So you know what? I'm going to pick this up. Next year. I did read this. I believe I read this many years ago. I think I did. We'll see. I'll know for sure next year because I think this is going to be my 1950s book. This was from the 50s, right? I don't know. We'll see. So Puppet Masters, I'm probably reading this. Rocket Summer will return. And speaking of classic science fiction, I've just got a ton of classic science fiction I have to get to. So hopefully in some of my free months next year, I will be able to get to some classic science fiction. Everybody is telling me that this is the book I need to get to next. Nobody can believe that I haven't read this yet. I know, I'm an idiot. I haven't read The Forever War yet by Joe Haldeman. So I have to read this, I understand, and I will, definitely. Now, my least successful reading event this year has been, well, actually I've had two really unsuccessful ones. I've had the Summer of Trek, Book Trek. Every year, I think, Book Trek, a reading event dedicated to reading Star Trek books, created by Revenant Reads, great channel. And it was a Summer of Trek again this year, where all during the summer, we read some Star Trek books. And I only read one Star Trek book this year, which is not very good. And the summer is pretty much finished. So man, another year where I screwed up on Book Trek. And I really wanted to read this one, The Price of the Phoenix, because Steve Donahue keeps telling me what a masterpiece of literature this is. So I have to read this, right? And I meant to get to it this year. So maybe I still will. Maybe I still will get to this book this year. But yeah, Book Trek, I've got to do better next year. But Garb August is really the one. Oh man, will I ever get to Incubus? Will I ever read this book by Ray Russell? Again, another classic of literature. Definitely want to get to more trashy. I got so much trash to read for Garb August. The great reading event created by CriminOlly, all about reading trash. And this is trash I didn't read, which I really wanted to. Hey, I have a question. Speaking of trashy books. Here's a series that I've been meaning to get to forever, which was kind of these books I saw everywhere when I was a kid. But do they count for Garb August? Is this a Garb August book, this bastard right here? Is this bastard a Garb August book, or is it too classy for Garb August? It seems trashy to me. So is this Garb August material? Should I start this next to Garb August, this great series, The Bastard? This is the Kent Family Chronicles. This is the first book in the series, The Bastard. The Bastard. And I've been intending to get to this series. Everything else I've read by John Jakes has been trash. So I do want to get to this series, and I've been intending to for a long time. So let me know. Is it trash? I don't know. And so there's that. Then there's also, of course, Sumerian September. And this year for Sumerian September, which is a reading event all about Robert E. Howard's Conan. Robert E. Howard and Robert E. Howard's greatest creation, Conan. Last year we read stories written by Robert E. Howard, his original Conan stories. I read all of the Conan stories last year once again for Sumerian September. This year, it's all about pastiche fiction, Conan stories written by other people, other than Robert E. Howard. But what about next year? Sumerian September, it's a thing now, so it's going to return. Next year, Conan is actually going to go on vacation. Conan, he's on vacation. So he will be unavailable for next year's Sumerian September. So next year will be all about reading Robert E. Howard's other heroes. His other heroes like Cull or Bran MacMorn or Solomon Kane or this guy, El Borak. So all about Robert E. Howard's other heroes other than Conan, because next Sumerian September, Conan's back in Samaria, hanging out, having a vacation. So we'll be concentrating on Robert E. Howard's other heroes next year, and this is one of them, El Borak. So that should be fun. These books about his other characters are not read as much as the Conan stories are, so that'll be a good time. And also, for this year, I've got this thing where at the end of the year in December, I'm reading every story written by H.P. Lovecraft, all of Lovecraft's original fiction. I'll be reading in December. And that'll be fun, but you can only do that really once. But I was thinking about what if This is just something I'm thinking about. What if every year in December, we'll call it something else. Maybe it'll be like Dreadful December or something. I don't know. We'll come up with a snappy title. But we will concentrate on a single writer of horror. A single writer of horror. This year, of course, it's going to be Lovecraft. And I was thinking next year we can do the same thing next December. And I was thinking about Algernon Blackwood. You know, maybe it'll be Algernon Blackwood next December. Maybe this is the guy whose fiction. I mean, we won't be reading all of it because he wrote quite a bit. But, you know, we'll read some of it. Algernon Blackwood. Maybe Algernon Blackwood will be the horror writer we read in December next year. We'll see. We'll see. You know, let me know what you think. But I'm thinking of making it kind of an annual thing. I just have to come up with a good name for horror in December. I have to come up with a good name. And I have to read something ambitious. You know, this year in October, around then I'll be reading Varney the Vampire, which is a gigantic book, which I had been intending to get to forever. And so that is my ambitious book for this year. But next year, you know, I need an ambitious book for next year. And I think it's going to be this one. I think it's going to be this one. Now, I would give the title, but I can never pronounce. Is it Le Mort d'Auteur? I can't pronounce it, Roger. I can't speak French. But I'll be reading this unpronounceable book by Sir Thomas Malory next year, probably in October. Probably. I was actually toying with the idea of doing a reading event all about reading fiction from the Middle Ages, just to try to entice David Wiley back to BookTube. But we'll see. But definitely, this is going to be the ambitious book I'm going to be reading next year. It's a book I should have read by now, frankly. I've got like three different copies of this. This is probably the one that I'll read, is this one from Everyman's Library. That's a nice one, right? Is this? I mean, tell me if this is not the one to read, because somebody out there knows better than I do about this. But yeah, this is the one. This is the ambitious book I'm going to read next year. Here's a couple authors that I want to get to. I wanted to get to more of these authors' books this year, but next year I'm going to really make an effort to read more from these authors. One is Ramsey Campbell, which is an author I like a lot, but I didn't get to anything pretty much from Ramsey Campbell this year, so next year I'm going to give it another try. I really like this guy, Ramsey Campbell, so I'll be reading more of him. And this one I definitely am going to get to. Definitely. And that is Clark Ashton Smith. I need to read more Clark Ashton Smith because he is one of the Weird Tales big three authors. And yeah, I need to talk about this guy some more. So I need to refresh my memories of his work. I've read a lot of Clark Ashton Smith, but I need to read more. And so I'm going to read more of Clark Ashton Smith next year, talk more about him next year. He is an author who deserves a lot more videos on BookTube, frankly. So, and this is from Fantasy Masterworks. This is The Emperor of Dreams. This is edited by Stephen Jones? Yeah, edited and with an afterword by Stephen Jones. And this is actually a pretty excellent collection from what I remember. So there's that. But there's also some other fantasy classics I want to get to. What? What? Why are you so bad? Why are you so bad? Don't you know I'm trying to make a video? Why are you so wretched? Are you going to be quiet? Will you be quiet for me so I can finish this? Be quiet. She's not going to be quiet. Where was I? Oh, yes. There's some fantasy classics, more fantasy classics I want to get to. I did a whole video about all the fantasy classics I want to get to. And I hope to get to a few of them next year. We'll see. I definitely need to get to more Lord Dunsany. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce his name now. Lord Dunsany, I think. And so this is the Fantasy Masterworks version of Time and the Gods. So I need to get to probably this one. This is one I'll probably read. and probably Vericonium from M. John Harrison, which is supposed to be fantastic. I read a little bit of this. There was a paperback of The Pastel City that I read years and years ago and really liked, and that's part of this book. Vericonium from M. John Harrison. So hope to read that. And a couple more things. I need to read more crime and detective fiction because I feel like that's something that's missing from this channel. And just in my regular life pre-BookTube, I read a lot of that. And somehow that's fallen away in the last few years. So I'm probably going to start by revisiting Raymond Chandler, another author that needs to be talked about more. And so I'll probably read some Raymond Chandler in January and February of next year and talk about this great writer who I just haven't spoken enough about. And we'll go through all of his books. I have his books in the Library of America 2-volume set. And so that's how I'll read it. So Raymond Chandler coming next year. And of course, everybody loves my comic book material. They love the comic book content, Roger. So I am reading every issue of the Fantastic Four. These guys, the Fantastic Four, I'm reading every issue of the Fantastic Four. And will I finish every issue of the Fantastic Four this year? Maybe. And I'm reading them from the first volume of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 61 until 96. And then they restarted the Fantastic Four with another #1 issue. But the first volume is what I'm reading. And then I think we're going to be following that up with Captain America. I think that's the next one on the list. If I'm remembering right. I'm going to go through all of Marvel's great superhero comic books. The first volume of all the fantastic Marvel comic superheroes. And this is the one I'm on now. I finished Thor, and so Fantastic Four is what I'm on now. And so next year, we'll see what I get through. But definitely the Marvel Comics Master Plan project continues. I'm having a great time with that. But there's also another comic book project I want to sneak in next year. But I'm not ready to talk about that, Roger. It's all top secret. It's top secret. And I will talk about that soon at another time on another video. But I've probably gone on at length about these dopey plans of mine. I will catch you next time.